This setup reminds me of I spent a year at the Farm Credit Administration in Washington working in the information division. And one of the things that I did was the agent, I mean well, like we called it FCA, Farm Credit Administration. FCA had not a contract, but we have an arrangement with the information division at USDA, the Department of Agriculture. So they have an information division, and they publish books and booklets, and they do all sorts of things. But they had a weekly television show on NBC that probably was shown at 4:30 in the morning on Tuesday, when no one really watched it. But anyway, they had this 30-minute Department of Agriculture television show, and it was recorded at WRC, the NBC station in Washington, and they invited the Farm Credit Administration to have like 1 week of the month. So we're trying to get somebody to fill in these slots, and so would you all take? Well, we were happy to do it. And John Greeneisen, who was the director of information, tagged me and said, "You do the TV show." So once a month, I would get somebody from the agency, and we'd go to WRC and walk into the studio to do this show. And we had a set with a couch and chair, and so today I'm visiting with so-and-so, and right like next door, like there was a wall here, and it wasn't really next door, but it was on the set next to us, was the Today Show. Tom Brokaw and other people on the Today Show and of course we were there an ungodly hour, so we weren't interfering with the Today Show, but the set was right there. And so we would do these TV shows and 30-minute interviews, and it was a lot of fun. And the show wasn't broadcast in the Washington, D.C. area. It was broadcast out in the middle of Iowa. And so I never saw him. I didn't, but people would say, "I saw you on TV." And so what are you doing up at that time of day?
Give me kind of a 50,000-foot flyover of all your international travel.
It was all related to the work of ACDI, Agricultural Cooperative Development International. And cooperative development means that the big cooperatives in the United States, like Sunkist and Farmland and Land O'Lakes and big agricultural cooperatives, and some electric cooperatives as well, supported this work that we did that was being done on an international basis. And essentially what we were doing, the concept, the big picture was we were going to third world countries and helping farmers and really citizens develop cooperatives, the business farm, the business organization of a cooperative, where they had been a company or a corporation would go into, say, to Kenya and market strawberries, let's say. And so they would go around and gather all the strawberries and pay the farmers for them, and give each farmer, let's say, 50 cents a bushel or a package or however. Well, if 100 farmers would get together and put their strawberries together and take them to market, they could get double the price that they were being paid by this corporation. That's the idea of a cooperative, where they were cooperating with one another and form a company and hire a manager and didn't buy trucks to transport and do the business, that the corporation had come in and taken advantage of them, really. I mean, gave them a very low price. For example, we had a project, we meaning ACDI, we had a project in Tonga, on the island of Tonga, and the farmers there grow vanilla beans. And so you can imagine this corporation going in and buying the vanilla beans of one farmer, going down the road buying his vanilla beans and going with a truck around and picking up all the vanilla beans. We organized a cooperative and tripled the income in one season, tripled the income of the vanilla bean growers there. And so we did that in a number of different places. Where I went was primarily looking at credit systems, because there's two aspects of credit. One is the analysis of credibility or credit worthiness. So you analyze a farm or a business and say, is it credit worthy? Or can we loan them money and know that they're going to repay us? And if there's a reservation or a thought that they can never repay us, we're not going to make that loan. If you know for sure that they're going to be profitable and are capable of repaying, then you make that loan. So that's one aspect of the credit business. The other aspect is the structure. That is, the hiring the people, building a building, raising funds to loan, those kinds of internal or infrastructure issues. And so you have to deal with both of those if you're working in a third world country. So we went to Thailand, where they had the infrastructure, but their people didn't know how to analyze risk, for example. They didn't know how to analyze different kinds of operations. They didn't understand credit worthiness. They didn't understand. They had the building, they had the people, but they weren't trained. So that's one aspect of a project that we were working on in some countries. In other countries, they had the people, but they didn't have the infrastructure. So, for example, in Malawi, they had the infrastructure. I mean, they had the people, but they didn't have the infrastructure. So they had people, must have had 100 people in the agency that had been trained and knew how to analyze loans and knew how to deliver credit, but they didn't have any offices, they didn't have any field operations. They couldn't get to where the farmers were. And so you have different issues in different countries. I was working primarily in areas where we were working on credit systems. Went to the Agricultural Bank of China, for example. We went and were invited by them to come and look at their operation and to take a look and make recommendations regarding training. How do we train people? And so we went, Ron Gallahan and I and another guy went and spent 2 weeks traveling around China. And it was amazing, because they had like 35,000 offices and 600,000 employees. And we said, the scale here is just, we just can't handle it. We don't know how to deal with this. And so we walked away from it and said, you need to talk to the World Bank or somebody else, because this is way beyond our scope and what we're able to do. But we worked for example, in Thailand. It was a completely different issues and different scale, different scope. But I worked I went to and worked some in Kenya, worked a lot in Malawi, made 2 or 3 trips to Malawi. The administrator of the credit system in Malawi said, we can send people to Washington I ran a 6-week credit course in Washington under the auspices of the Department of Agriculture. And we would have these international people come from all over the world to Washington for 6 weeks of training. The administrator from Malawi came and said, it would be more cost effective for me to take you to Malawi as opposed to bringing my people here. So I went to Malawi and did this 6 week credit course for them with like 50 of their employees. So I went there, went to Kenya, went to Malawi, which was one of my favorite places to go. That's really Thailand, China, Egypt, Malawi, Kenya. That's kind of my international travels.
Do you remember when you went to China? Do you know the years? Roughly?
Not really.
I do.
And really,
Because you brought back a communist coat and a hat
oh yeah.
for me. And I remember because I wore it to Deidre's 16th birthday party. So it had to have been 1981.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So it's funny how we mark time, right?
Yeah, that's right, yeah.
Yeah.
But you know, we saw yesterday that bundle of passport books that I have. I've traveled and had to have an insert put into my passport because I'd been to so many different countries. But
Yeah. Good.
Good. Malawi was your favorite?
yeah,
Yeah, I remember you telling us that the weather was like San Diego.
it was perfect. It was perfect weather.
Yeah.
And really, I had a spiritual experience there that was unlike any that I've ever had. So,
Well, tell us about that.
I was a Christian. I was active in church. I was a deacon at Fairfax Circle Baptist Church. And so I'm getting ready to go to Malawi. So I take my Bible, thinking I might read the Bible, because I didn't do that. I didn't read the Bible on a regular basis. And I took a copy of Patrick Morley's book, Man in the Mirror. And I started reading that, and I couldn't put it down. I just kept reading it and reading it. And what Patrick Morley teaches in Man in the Mirror is that, well, the title of the book is, when you look in the mirror, who do you see? And you're accountable to that person that you see in the mirror. And that person is accountable to Jesus. And he talks about cultural Christians. Cultural Christians are like the circus rider who rides two horses, puts one foot on the back of two different horses and goes around a circle. And everybody's cheering him because he's doing this trick. But in fact, that's what most Christians do. A lot of Christians, especially Christian men. And so I said, that's what I'm doing. So I made a decision to pick up my foot off of the culture and put my both feet on the back of Jesus and said, I'm going to, from this point forward, devote my life to being a full-blown, full-fledged, full-time follower of Christ. And so it was very meaningful to me at that time. And what I remember is getting on my knees beside my bed in a little room in the lodge at Lake Malawi and giving my life to Christ.